So there's no way I'm missing her wedding. So I got on the bus. 3 days later, I was in Harare, freezing because of the temperature differences, not because it was cold. And I called my dad and I said, I didn't realize you guys hated me so much. Listen,
after 3 days on the bus.
Happiness is a conscious decision on a daily basis.
It is.
And on the days when you actually can get away throughout the whole day with being happy, then great.
Yeah.
Record it as a win.
Yeah.
On the days when you fall off the wagon, it's okay as well. So today we're happy.
Today we're happy. I'm happy too. Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Moments with Nyengeterai, and I just want to say thank you to the community for supporting us, and we're really excited about season 2. And what we tried to do is to get all the people that you've been asking us to bring on the show, and some of them I'll ask them the questions that you've asked me to ask. So today we have an amazing guest. You've been asking for her, and she's here today. Candace, welcome. How are you doing?
I'm happy. How are you?
You're happy.
Yeah.
You look happy. Yeah. No, I'm happy. I think I am. No, I am happy. I think we have to be happy, because if we are not...
You know, I had a conversation with someone yesterday that made me realize that happiness is a conscious decision on a daily basis.
It is.
And on the days when you actually can get away throughout the whole day with being happy, then great.
Yeah.
You record it as a win.
Yeah.
On the days when you fall off the wagon, it's okay as well. So today we're happy.
Today we're happy. I'm happy too. So Candace, talk to our viewers. Please tell them who Candace is. You know, besides the broadcast, who is Candace?
Ooh. At this point, Candace is a lot of people. But I think deep down, in essence, I am just someone who really wants to know that when I'm gone, I'll be remembered.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So how did you get into broadcasting? Let's start there.
Quite by accident.
Yeah.
Quite by accident. Sitting at home being in Tanzania, after about a year of being there, couch potato life was great. And then my dad's friend comes home one day and goes, she speaks English. I'm assuming she can read, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got an opening at our station. Why doesn't she come out and try it? So I went in for the audition the next day as an English newsreader. 2 weeks later, I was employed and learning everything on the job.
Wow. Tanzania. Let's go to Tanzania. So you grew up, you were born, you're not Zimbabwean.
I'm not Zimbabwean, but I am Zimbabwean. I'm both. I was born in Sakuva.
Oh, really? So
Yes.
how did you get to Tanzania?
So born in Sakuva, raised in Harare, but my roots are in Tanzania. So that's where my dad has always lived.
Oh.
So after my A-levels here, what's supposed to have been a 1-month holiday turned into 7 years of my life in Tanzania.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that's where also the broadcaster was found.
Ah. So let's go to your childhood. So you grew up in Sakuva?
No. Grew up in Avondale.
In Avondale? But your dad was in Tanzania?
Yes.
Talk to me about your childhood.
So grew up Nanatete. Nambuya wangu, my dad's mom. So was raised really around a lot of this side of the family, the Zimbabwean side of the family, being my dad's mom's side of the family. And Anatete wangu, my dad's sisters, also had moved here. So they raised me locally. Went to school, Avondale Primary School, Selborne Rutledge, then Girls High. And pretty much caused a lot of chaos in Avondale West.
Okay, what kind of chaos did you cause? Oh, how was growing up like? I mean, your childhood, talk to us about your childhood.
I think I had a good childhood. I think I had a good childhood. Very spoiled because I was the only child around for a long time. I think up until the age of, did those other people start popping up? I was about 9, I think, when people I call my siblings started appearing. So pretty much a good life because I'm the only child around. I get to run around, do what I want, lie out in the sun, get burnt, not go to school because I've got sunburn because I'm stubborn.
Yeah.
Get healed and go back and do the same pattern.
Yeah.
A lot of friends around the neighborhood, especially from Avondale Primary School. So we'd all just do like a little convoy, pass through McDonald's, walk all the way home, drop each other off as we go. So I think I had a really fun childhood. I had a proper childhood. No gadgets, just outside playing with everybody else.
Really?
Yeah.
But now how, like, you didn't have any issues like with school, children, other kids, and when you were like sunburnt and everything, nothing?
Oh, look, I think I went through normal phases of life, normal phases of childhood. Yes, here and there you'll have a mean child pop up. I remember this one incident. I had ringworms. And so they were in my head. And so we had to shave my head bald, right? School was fine. Then I go visit my mom in Adbeni. And I've got my hat on and we're running in the streets and we're fine. Then my hat flies off. One kid spots it. She goes, Goldilocks!
Oh my gosh.
And that became a nickname for that holiday.
Oh my God.
Yeah. It wasn't fun, but I got over it very quickly, I think, because the playing went back to normal. Yeah.
Oh, okay. And then no challenges in terms of like, I want to like any life lessons from your childhood that you feel like any points that stick out. When you're like, when I look back in my life, there's certain moments that I'm like, when I was in primary school, that part, that this really stood out for me, or it changed my perspective, or it actually maybe changed my behavior or created a bit of who I am.
I think not that I can actually pinpoint to. However, I will note that, remember the humans I referred to as my siblings, when they started popping out, I think I discovered a side of me that cared about what people felt, that cared about what people thought and how I made them feel in particular. And I think if I'd paid attention to that a bit more then, it really would have shaped a lot of situations a bit more differently for me. Because I was moving from a space of, look, you're the only one who's been around. And now you have to accommodate a whole football team of other little human beings who are all looking up to you. And there were moments in that time where I knew I was not the kindest I could be to them. But I was a little also caught up in but what about me? If I had been paying attention to those dynamics at those times the way I would now, I would really have handled the situations a lot more differently. And so now I'm more cautious as I talk to people, as I interact with them, on how do I come off, and what impression do I leave you with of me when I turn around and head in the opposite direction. Yeah.
And now, how's your relationship with them, with the other with the other humans that came and took up your space?
Right. They're now grown humans. They're now very grown humans. We have very interesting conversations, and we're all in different journeys in life, but we still come together and remember, how are you doing? How are you doing? We'll remember to check in every so often. So we're good now.
So family is very important to you.
Extremely.
It plays a very important role.
Yeah.
Okay. And now, broadcaster, you've now come back. What made you come back? In fact, you said you were in Tanzania, you'd gone on holiday. And what made you stay instead of the few months to 7 years, you said?
Yeah, it became 7 years.
Why did you stay for 7 years? And what were you doing in the 7 years? And what lessons were you learning in those 7 years, if any?
My first biggest lesson was learning Swahili. Because when I went there, I spoke English and Shona. And then I get there, and apart from my dad, my siblings on that end, Nana Bamkuru and the likes, everybody else was...
Oh, so because like,
we can't understand each other. So I very quickly had to learn Swahili because I was like, look, I'm not mute. I need to fit in. I need to figure this out. So that was my very first, very big lesson. And I appreciate it a lot more now because I can do that. And also just adapting to new environments. It was all completely new to me. That was the first time I'd ever been there. It was not just a new country, but even the habits that they had were very different from what I grew up knowing, and so I also learned how to accommodate different people. You think you think you're accommodating until you meet someone whose cultures are completely different from yours. Then you're like, okay, wait, I don't know how accommodating I actually am. So
what are the stark difference? What are those kind of nuances that really stuck out? And that
the first thing for me is how they interact. So Tanzania is pretty much 50% Christian, 50% Muslim. And so there are certain things that, because we're used to being a Christian nation, we take for granted certain greetings, certain sayings, or the way we interact with people. I mean, it's not unusual for me here to hug a male, for example. But it is a bit unusual there because they're like, do you know each other? Are you intimate? You know, there's certain boundaries that you have to learn to draw. Yes. Observing, their holy months, learning which calendars go how. That was completely new as well, because here, listen, Easter, we're eating throughout, we're doing whatever we're doing. So understanding that you're working with different people now, and so how you would handle yourself during their sacred time, you should be cognizant of the fact that, look, you are wanting to open your lunchbox, but you're causing unnecessary problems with the next person. So all these little nuances that you had to learn from scratch and actually acclimatize to. So that was an interesting experience for me. What was I doing in the 7 years? The first year was couch potato. I was on my dad's couch doing absolutely nothing.
So it was after A-level.
This is after my A-levels. And then got into media. So I was in that space for about 2 years on radio and television there. From there, I moved to basically public relations and events coordination. And that was my biggest lesson in Tanzania. I mean, everything that I did, I learned on the job. And now, for me, that was, okay, you actually can do something. You're decent at something. You don't suck at it.
Why were you saying that to yourself? Did you not believe in yourself? Why?
I think I didn't. You know how when you're in high school or you go through phases where somebody asks you, oh, what do you want to do when you grow up? And for me, it constantly shifted. I think at some point I wanted to be a pilot. Then at another point, I wanted to be an air hostess. But I know now as an adult that's because my uncle, who was a pilot, would come home with like little goodies. So for me, that's what the job was, coming home with little goodies, right? Then I wanted to become a child psychologist. That was in my mid-teens. And then I realized that, okay, maybe not yet. Right. But because I loved kids at that point. So I had these little humans around me all the time. So for me, I was like, okay, I'm feeling things as a teenager that no one is actually explaining to me, that nobody is taking me through. And they're causing certain elements of friction among the people around me. Maybe somebody needs to be able to address these better. So that's where that came from. And then broadcasting absolutely, completely found me at a time where I was just like, man, what And then this came along and wow, okay, not bad.
Wow. And then what made you move after the 7 years there in Tanzania and coming back home?
I missed home. That is home too, but this was the home that raised me. This was the home that instilled in me who ultimately I was. And I missed it terribly. A lot of me also missed the connections that I had growing up. So the friends that I had growing up, because I'm that person who will stick to a friend for as long as I possibly can. And what will then separate us is most likely distance, which is what had happened. So I then, with the advent of your Facebook at the time, I was then able to reconnect with friends that I had, and we were getting along. And I was like, I actually missed them. I wish I could go back and see them. So I did that, and then the other thing was I kind of also needed to prove to myself that I could do it. I could actually come home and not don't know how to say this politely.
You can say it anyhow.
Entirely mess up my life, and not become a pauper, so to speak. So I came back, and it was also a challenge to myself. Say, hey, go out there and prove that you actually can make it anyway. And so I came back.
What were your parents' reactions to your dad to say, right, I'm going, but I've got no job? Did you have a job when you were coming back?
No, I didn't. I had no plan. I had no clue. My dad was not amused. Neither was my bamkuru, who I'm also very close to. So the two of them were not amused, and they did everything they possibly could to try and prevent it from happening, until at the very last minute, they're like, okay, fine, she's going anyway. And so I got on a bus and I came back. But they were not particularly...
Bus?
Yeah. Yes. That's how much they tried to make sure I didn't get back. Because they're like, listen, the first option was a flight. And then one of the two, I won't mention which one, one of the two says to me, find a ticket, but it has to be below this amount. Now, with the time that was there, below that amount was not going to happen. So that was already off the table. And then the other one says, okay, fine. So you can get on the train, then you can go to Kapiriposhi. When you get there, so-and-so will assist you and pick you up. And then, you'll cross over in a bus and then it'll be shorter. And then after a few days, he's like, why are we disturbing people? Why do we want to now give people responsibility? You're not their child. You're my child.
You're the one who wants to go.
Yes. So that also then became a right of, it's not safe and everything in between. And I was like, listen, guys, I'm running out of time. Okay. So initially the deadline was a wedding that was happening. My cousin's wedding was happening. So that was the first opening door to this conversation. I'm like, hey, we're running out of time. I need to go or I'm not catching this wedding. And then they're like, well, go by bus, but it's 3 days. I'm like, what? So I almost didn't come. But eventually I was like, okay, I can't miss the wedding. Again, this is a cousin who very close to, grew up together. Pretty much every other holiday we were together. So there's no way I'm missing her wedding. So I got on the bus. 3 days later, I was in Harare, freezing because of the temperature differences, not because it was cold. And I called my dad and I said, I didn't realize you guys hated me so much. Said, listen.
After 3 days on the bus.
Because that was an adventure. I'm not cut out for those adventures. It's not my portion. Yeah.
And then you got back to Zim, getting back with your friends. But now, how did you get into broadcasting in Zim? Because obviously, I think it must have been different. And what were some of your challenges,
So the first challenge was I had a relative that I gave my CVs to and said, please help me find a job. And this relative sat on them. Just decided, it was a read. They're always busy. And I get that, right? I completely understand. Tried out your classifieds in the newspapers, got a job, I think, within my first 2 months of being back. Tried that out. She also was not quite sure what she wanted to do with her company. So I eventually left that alone. And then I happened to be on Facebook looking around and I see Banaresi FM. And I said, oh, okay, this is interesting. So I started looking into, okay, what is this about? Who do I need to look for? And then I went to a different relative and said, I'm looking for Mr. Mandwanzira. How do I get in touch with him? And everybody that I knew had his details just gave me a runaround. And so eventually I said to one of my friends, I'm looking for this man. How do I get hold of him? And he says to me, message by Facebook. I was like, oh yeah, actually, smart idea. So I did exactly that. So, sorry to interrupt your day. My name is so-and-so. I would like to come through to your station for an audition. And he actually messaged back and said, oh, I'm not around at the moment, but come to our offices on such and such a day. And we can see you whether there's anything there. Day came, went there with a friend of mine, Captain Awesome. He looks at me and says, okay, what do you want? I said, I'd like to be part of your broadcasting team. Okay,
Was his captain awesome?
No, Mr. Mandwanzira.
Oh.
You, what do you want? Okay. Took me off to Delani for an audition. Then looks at Captain Ross and says, you, what do you want? He had his magazine at the time, so he was pitching that. And I think somewhere in the middle of our interaction, after he'd dropped us off with Delani, some bright spark went off in Delani's head and says, you two, why don't you try and audition this? So that's how we both ended up on radio here.
Really? Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Oh, my gosh. And how has that journey been? You know, the journey in broadcasting in Zim and where you are now, the growth. What have been your biggest challenges in broadcasting, being a woman in broadcasting and in Zim in particular?
I think the landscape for me is very different here. I was coming from a space where broadcasting allowed you to be who you were, it respectfully, of course, but you were allowed to have a personality. You were allowed to have a voice. You were allowed to have opinions. And I came and you were a little bit constrained and you were boxed. So I started off in news, and that meant that I had to be serious throughout, and I could not be the clown that I am in other spaces. But there's so many dimensions to my personality, and you'll find that the least dominant personality is the serious one when it's me. You know, so it was a struggle for me, because then I would find myself interacting with my fellow clowns like Kimball. And Kimball is ready to pull you out of that box because he knows there's something in there. And you'd land yourself in trouble for it. Not because you said the wrong thing, but why were you doing this after this, or why were you... So that for me was a very difficult dynamic to navigate, because it meant I needed to contain myself in a way that I wasn't used to. The other thing I think with being female is the men in media tend to be gatekeepers. And when you need their assistance, it feels as though they're doing you a favor. It's treated as though the only reason you can't do it is because you are inferior to them by virtue of the fact that you're female. So they will take each other seriously as men in their circles. And if they call Ningi and need to get their questions answered, it's fine. And then if you need to do it, unless this one has called first, this person is going to give you the runaround. So it was very difficult to have our counterparts take us seriously. But it's shifted quite significantly since then, which is amazing, which is great. Because now you'll find that we actually do have strong female personalities in media. And it's great to say that, look, even though it wasn't always like that, we are getting there now. So it's really been an interesting shift to watch. The other difficulty there was, which also is starting to lift now, is, look, media is not going to pay you. It was never going to pay you. It doesn't matter where you go. The media itself is not what's going to pay you. But what comes with that is opportunities. Now, for a very long time, those opportunities were picked and selected. Who do we give it to? And who do we take it from? And why do we head it this way? Why do we push it that way? Right? But now we're at a point where people are actually seeing the value of the individuals. And so the media houses themselves are now also realizing that, no, there is a shift in the landscape. And so it's now not us controlling how things come in. But if we want to make money, we actually have to realize that the brands that we have on board are of value, and we should allow them to explore their value and bring that value back to us. So for them, it was, no, we will bring the value to you, when that actually wasn't how it was supposed to work. So it's a space that's also starting to self-correct, and it's very interesting to watch, because I'm happy as I see that a lot of the females who are in media are actually starting to be valued the way that they should. You see the endorsements coming in, and you're like, that's fantastic. And they're endorsements of value, endorsements that say, the next generation of broadcasters know kuti handiskuita dhirire kuti ndongonzi tichakupa oh man, I need to say tichakupa macarrots ekuti uchamadya nhasi obva apera, right?
Yeah.
You are seeing things of substance that are coming up, and brands of substance that are believing in the personalities that are speaking to the nation. So I'm very happy to see that shift is starting to happen for women in media. I think those are the two major issues that were there, but they're very quickly starting to self-correct. And we also do have, I think, strong female voices that are coming out and actually making a difference and standing for something. And that is something that really should be applauded.
Wow, that's fantastic. So if you were to talk to, let's say, some young girls who are thinking of getting into broadcasting, what kind of advice would you give them? Seeing that you did 7 years in Tanzania, you've done how many years here? Almost 10 years, not more here. And you want to speak to you're at a career day and some girls say, we want to get into broadcasting. How would you mentor or direct them into getting into broadcasting?
I think the first step for me would be getting to understand how far they've come along the journey of finding who they are. A lot of the times now, like a lot of professions or careers, sometimes you find yourself in that space, not necessarily because ndoja or but ndoma options are kwauri. And because of that, you don't necessarily know who you are in that space. The belief for a lot of people is media, journalism, it's easy. No option itongoripo. But that's not what it is. Who are you? I remember when I was still in Tanzania, I attempted to go to school for journalism. Attempted.
I like that.
Attempted. And the first thing, and it's always stuck with me, the first thing our lecturer said to us was, listen, you are either a journalist or you are not. And there's no in between. It's very difficult for someone to then suddenly learn to become a journalist. And how do you know you're a journalist? You're very curious about what's happening around you. You're very curious about matters of substance, right? It's great to know the gossip. It's great to know the entertainment. It's great to know all that. That's fun. But you are also very, very curious about what are the things that shift dimensions in the world that you live in. Whether it's on a local scale, regional scale, international scale, you have a general knowledge that allows you to have conversations with pretty much anyone. So that's the first thing you know, because you're curious. You're always trying to find out, so what's going on here? How did this happen? How did we get here? How do you? That's your first step. The second step is you have opinions. They're not going to be always right. They're not always going to be wrong, but you have them and you can voice them, right? What then becomes a skill that you learn is how to not enforce your opinion on somebody else, but rather use your opinion to start a conversation. And that conversation becomes something also that equips you, that gives you the information that you want to get out of somebody. So it's knowing who you are first. Are you a journalist because ndoja jakapusa, or are you a journalist because it's actually something you think you can enjoy? It's actually something that you're curious about. And once you know who that is, you then know where you fit in. All right, let's say you're not a journalist, but you still want to be in broadcasting. Fair enough. How good are you at interacting with people? You can't say, I want to be in media and I never want to go anywhere. How? Because out there is where everything is happening, right? So you have to be one of those that says, okay, this is what I'm choosing, and I know I'm comfortable in these spaces. I know I'm comfortable in areas that put me out there, and some of these areas can be extremely uncomfortable. They can be extremely uncomfortable. I mean, you'll get to a space where you'll find people will just look at you. And you're like, you know? So it's not always going to be fun and roses and butterflies and whatnot. You're going to have spaces that you have to enter, but can make you feel uncomfortable. Are you able to grow in those environments? Are you able to overlook those situations and say, look, I am here to get something out of it, and I will get that, and I will add value to what I'm leaving. So they know who you are. Once you've known who you are, you're able to navigate these spaces better. You're able to understand whether you're really there for the right reasons, or you just need to do something that will get you a job. If you're doing something to get you a job, then you're in trouble. Then you're in trouble. Then you need to now reevaluate. Okay, what else am I good at? What else can I do? What are my other options? And list them down, look at the pros and cons of everything before you then take your next steps forward. But I think essentially, as we start to guide each other, that would be the starting point.
That's very interesting, because I think a lot of people, like you said, they think it's easy. It's like, my background is marketing. I think everybody who either has failed or is not doing well, they just think, oh, well, maybe we're into marketing. But they forget about the creativity. You have to be very creative as well. You have to be analytical. You have to be someone who likes to analyze things, but I think they just look at another aspect of marketing, which is now the same. I think, and those pivotal questions that you were asking, I think are very important for everybody to ask, even when they think of whatever profession they want to get into, to truly understand that they want to do that. So moving on to adulthood, you're now an adult, you're in...
that someone claims I don't know how adult I am.
You know?
Age-wise, sure. And my age is getting very serious this year.
What's your age getting serious this year?
I'm 38 this year.
And that's serious?
That's serious. No, listen. I know, context, it's fine.
As long as you're on the third floor, you're still okay. You're still okay.
No, it's sounding a little too serious. It's like, I don't know.
No, you're still on the third floor, you're still okay. I think being an adult, what have been the most challenging times in terms of social life, relationships, family, work, I think we've touched. But yeah, I think relationships, family, growing up, what are your biggest challenges and lessons that you have learned, and how have they either made you a better person, or how have they changed the way you treat people?
Yeah, that's loaded. That's loaded. I think my biggest adult lesson is dealing with loss. When you're younger and people are passing, it's, ningiashaya, oh, that's sad. Okay. Tomorrow you're up and but as you get older and some of the people you're closest to, whether it be family, whether it be a relationship, whether it be, actually all of them are relationships. As you get older and they start to pass on, the weight of it sits heavy, and it sits heavier and it sits heavier. And you never quite, I don't think we're taught how to deal with grief and loss. And we also don't understand that, look, we've always, I think for the longest time, we've always thought that loss is, or grief is dealing nemuno ashaya. I recently learned that there's also a grief that comes with losing a friend.
Yeah.
Losing a partner. Not to death, but to life and circumstances. And nobody has ever said this is how you deal with that. And so you go through moments where you'll find yourself looking at something, you're like, oh, I need to pick up the phone. I can't pick up that phone. And you have to take it in stride. And because life has no time for you to fall apart, you just keep moving. But there are days when it comes and it sits on your heart, and all you can do is fall apart. Nobody's ever taught us how to deal with that. Nobody's ever taught me how to deal with that. And I think I've been finding myself having to deal with that a lot more now. And understanding that it's okay. It's okay to be affected by it. It's okay to be sad about it. It's okay to be hurt by it. It's okay to fall into a little space of depression because of it. But also finding that it's not okay to stay there for too long. Finding that space that people like to call balance. It doesn't really exist, but you have to find some straw where you say, oh, whoa, last straw. Got to pull myself out now. So, learning to identify those straws in your life that you use to pull yourself out of a space. I think that really adulting has been reteaching me, because I clearly don't learn, but it's been reteaching me that lesson over and over and over. I think the other thing that I'm learning as I get older, remember when I said to you initially, oh, okay, this is actually something that I'm good at. I've spoken to myself in the meanest of ways for a very long time. I've been very terrible to myself. But I've learned that it's not fair. I don't deserve that. I did that. What have I done so wrong to me that deserves that? Yes, I've made bad decisions here and there, but I'm a human being. And so the way that I treat somebody else with kindness, why can't I treat myself that way? Why can't I talk to myself the way I talk to somebody who's going through a similar situation? Because at the end of the day, if I'm not kind to myself, it doesn't matter who else tries to be kind to me. They come off to me as consoling, as temporary relief, as yes, it's the correct thing for us to do because this is the space we know you're in. But when you are kind to yourself, you can also recognize genuine kindness coming from somebody else. So, and you're also open to it, because we also don't know how to receive kindness. I don't know how to receive kindness. I don't know how to receive goodwill. But that's because I've never shown it to myself as well. So I think those are my big girl lessons at the moment, and that I'm still in the process of dissecting and processing
and learning.
Yep.
That is really, really, really interesting. I think what I loved about what you said is the kindness to yourself, being kind to yourself, learning to speak to yourself the way you'd be able to speak to someone else. Because I think you're not the only person. I think a lot of us go through that, where we really beat ourselves up, especially when you've done something, like you were saying, some bad decisions, you've made some really bad decisions. We all fall short of the glory of God. But the funny thing is we really mistreat ourselves. And that walk of shame, and then we bash ourselves for so long. What are some of the things that you use to pick yourself out of shame? All those things. What are some of the things that you do? What are some of the practices that you do?
The first thing that I do is I talk to my dad. I just send my dad a random message and have a conversation with him about anything. And what happens in that conversation is I then realize that he's far away and he may not know what I'm feeling now, but he still thinks the world of me. I'm his only daughter. So I can't be that bad if he can still talk to me like this. I can't be. I mean, you have dynamics where you look at it and you're like, but my response and the way they interact with you would not be the same. So my first port is always my dad. The other thing I like to do is I'll write it down. I'll give it a day or two. I'll go back and read it. If I still feel the same way about that situation, then I'll try and figure out, okay, so how do I address it? What was wrong with that situation? What was right with it? Separate the two. Deal with the wrong that I am able to deal with. I'm still learning to accept the things that are beyond my control. It's a struggle. It's not a constant win. But in separating and categorizing things, I always tend to then see that there's a lot more on the positives than there are on the negatives. And because there's a lot more on the positives, let's focus on this. Let's look at these good things. Let's look at these good points. Yes, this happened, but did you not smile when you had A, B, C, D, E? Did you not feel like you knew what you were doing when you executed A, B, C, D, E? Did you not, so you're like, okay, let's look back at, yes, we are here, but we didn't get here by accident or there's a path that led us here. As we went down that path, those good things that were happening down that path, they weren't just for the sake of being there. There's a reason they were there. Let's find those roots and let's go back to those roots, and we'll rectify this as we continue to pick up on those good things. I think the other thing that I that also falls in that is learning to be grateful, learning to be thankful for those good things. That even if it was a good thing that was in a moment, in a fleeting moment, it was still a good thing. And it still brought you some sense of joy, some sense of good, some sense of well-being. Thank you for it. You know? So those are some of the things that I'm learning to do on purpose. Because some of the methods you come across quite by accident. As you're trying to figure out how to cope, you'll come across something that is, okay, let me just try this. And oh, it actually does work. So and even that in itself is a thing to be thankful. Like, you know what, I've got a coping mechanism. I'm so thankful, and you continue to use it. So those are just a few of the mechanisms that I then use. And then the other thing that I also do is I'll find someone to just do something good for. Doing good sometimes can be selfish. It really can, because it's how it makes you feel.
Yeah.
Afterwards, it makes you feel better about yourself as a person. Yeah. And that's perfectly okay too, because you did it out of the goodness of your heart. Nobody expected it of you. You're not expecting anything of it outside of how you feel once you've done it.
Actually, what you said is very true. Someone actually said that to me the other time, that doing something good is very, very... When you're really feeling... They actually said, when you're feeling really, really low, you must get out and go and do something good for someone. Even if it means just a street kid. And
someone you never even have to see
again. They actually said that it gives you the sense of, I don't know what, feeling. And already the feelings will change the way you feel. By the time you get back home, your perspective or your mind has shifted. 3 pivotal moments in your life that really, like you say, like 1, 2, 3, these ones are, those pivotal moments in my life that I learned ABC.
3. So the first one was definitely that day in Tanzania when I went for my first interview, my first audition, getting in there with no idea what to do, and having someone say to me, okay, there's something we can work with there. Just go back and try it again. Take a break, be easy. Came back in 30 minutes later, and there was an affirmation there in just that you may not have executed it perfectly the first time around, but there's something that we're seeing, go and try it again. That, look, in that moment, I was shy. I'm terribly shy, terribly. And so that for me was like, did I? Didn't I? And then going back in and having someone say, yeah, it's definitely something we can work with there. They kept me waiting for 2 weeks, but in that moment, that in itself built a level of confidence in me that said, it's not a lost cause. And so from that moment on, I've just been like, whatever it is that comes my way, the worst I can do is fail and try again. So I've been okay with failing and trying again. So then that's where I learned that from. The second one would be you're losing my grandmother, 2012, and learning that it's okay to be conflicted. You will feel a certain way about a certain event in different phases of the process. There will be moments when you are torn apart by what's happened, and that's okay. There will be moments when you disconnect, and that's okay. There are moments when you can be extremely hurt that a person has done something or gone somewhere, and that's okay. Every emotion that you have stems from love. And so it's okay to go through them as long as you remember to come back to love. So that for me, when my grandmother died, I think was my ultimate lesson, because I went through a roller coaster of emotions. But I learned that, you know what, we had a rocky relationship, but there was still lots of love. The third one, the third one would be the one that one that I just meant, the grief, because that's fairly new. That's fairly new. I mean, things have happened before. People have died and all this, and friends have come and gone. But I recently was hit by a very hard lesson in grief. And I was like, okay, this is new. This is new. And for a very long time after the passing of this person, I was very conflicted, and I said to myself, I don't think I have a right to mourn this person because of circumstances and but I then also realized that I'm actually well within my rights to have felt how I felt, because, like it or not, there was a history, there was a bond that was there, and it cannot be ignored. And the harder you try to ignore it, the more damage and trauma it inflicts on you. And so that lesson on grief, that new recent lesson on grief, I think would be the third most pivotal lesson that I've had in my life.
Wow, yeah. Grief is hard. And it has its own stages. And, there are moments where you want to throw yourself, and there are moments where when you feel you're okay, and then something happens, maybe like a song plays that reminds you of a person, or a smell, things like that.
It's the littlest things, the most mundane of things possible. Yeah. You're like, oh. Yeah.
And they can throw you off, completely. I mean, I once dumped a trolley in Pick and Pay because someone walked by and they smelled like my brother. Yeah. And just could not. Tears just came rolling. So, yeah, it's so true. One more question before we get into our fun five. Have you ever felt any discrimination growing up? Have you ever been discriminated, or people looked at you for anything, growing up?
In all honesty, no. No. My family's first port of call was, hey, you are every other child in this household. If you misbehave, we will beat you the way we beat every other child in this house. Right? If there's consequences to your actions regardless of what's going on with your skin. And they raised me to never see myself as different. And so I've never seen myself as different. And I don't know, maybe I live in my head a little bit, but I've always believed that the first interaction with me is never about the color of my skin. My lack of pigmentation has never been an issue, because you then get to see who I am first before you see that. I think my first realization that, actually, hey, you really are different, was when I moved to Tanzania. But even then, it was not on a negative note. It was, angalia mzungu, look at the white girl, look at the white girl. It's like, oh, yeah, correct color, wrong race. So in terms of negativity, no, honestly, I've been extremely blessed, extremely lucky to be one of very few who can say I've not had to deal with any of that my entire life.
Oh, that's beautiful.
But then, or if I have, it's not been direct behind the corners, which is fine. Keep it there.
Oh, that's nice. I mean, like, by the way, I'm just saying, I've known you for so many years, but now look, I was like, Candice got really beautiful eyes. Anyway, thank you. It's a side note. So, last five. What's your favorite color and why?
Plum, because plum is a rich purple. It's very deep. There's layers to it. You get to it, upon mixing variations of different colors. But also it is the color of royalty. And I believe that my heart is as royal as they come.
Okay. Interesting. Favorite animal and why?
My favorite animal.
Why?
No, I don't have.
You don't have. What are you reading currently?
Currently, I was reading a book by Quincy Jones that I just finished. 12 Notes of Life. So basically, he takes us through a musical journey, but approaching life. So all the lessons that he's learned over the years as a musical genius, compounded in 12 notes.
Wow.
And it was such an amazing read for me.
I should look for it. That sounds very interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. What's the best movie you've ever watched?
Best movie? I'm not a movie person. See, and it's in my head. I can see it. Okay, it's a cartoon though.
Okay, now we know the kind of person you are.
I did
that child in you, but it's important to have. I think it's important because as adults, I think we take life too seriously, and sometimes we need to have.
Yes, so it's Megamind. I watched it with my aunt, who I call my mom, and so now anytime we call each other, you'll hear us go, "Oh no!"
Oh yeah,
because that's what he says. So that I think that hands down has to be my favorite, and I watched that over and over again.
If this was your last day on earth, what is the one thing that you wish you would have? Oh, what is the one thing that you say? Oh yeah, now I can peacefully die because I've done.
One thing, just one thing. Okay. Get out of my own head, honestly. And whatever time it is that I want to do, whatever it is that I want to do. So you know how you have ambitions and you come up with you have this brilliant idea in your head, but then you get stuck in, okay, but what can go wrong? Yeah, the day I get out of that space, that over-analyzing, that overthinking everything that I do and thinking, okay, but this could be wrong. And that day I'll be like, nah, it's okay. I've gotten out of this space. I've executed what I needed. Yeah, it went well, or no, it didn't. But I got it done. So now I'm good to go. That's the day for me.
It's very interesting. We're packing our bags. We're going to the airport. Where are we flying to?
We're going to the Maldives.
Yeah. I don't know how many. I think we need to do a group tour to Maldives because it looks like
somebody do it.
Everybody
We're going to the Maldives.
Everybody wants to go to the Maldives. Candace, it's been an amazing time. Thank you so much for your time, for coming through, and for just being candid and open, because I think it's so important for us at moments to have those candid conversations that help our viewers out there. Just the realness in this, I really, truly loved it. Any last words to our viewers before you go?
Look, I constantly love to say it. When I sign off at any event, I'll say, look, be kind to each other, but be kinder still to yourself.
Oh, thank you. With those words, I'm not even going to add anything. Thank you, Candace.
Thank you.
Thank you to our viewers. See you next week.